Hello, welcome. I'm Andrine, Jewish American Priestess, and I am here with a new reading today. I have a deck of cards that is new to me. I mean, I've had it for many months, but I've spent those months studying the book of it because it is a different system. It's the Mythologia Fennica Tarot. This is a deck of cards from Finland, which is my native heritage. And I finally finished reading the book, and I'm ready to start using the cards. The stories are very interesting and intricate and unusual and meaningful. And so what I'd like to do today in this Hebrune reading is I would like to pull out two cards and let you choose between the two. And then I will go more in depth into the stories behind those cards, and we'll do a Hebrune reading about them. So let's start out with choosing two cards. See what comes out today. Hopefully there'll be something that wants to be seen, some story that needs to be told. There's one and there's two. Okay, that was relatively quick. And I apologize in advance for my pronunciation of Finnish. I am not a native Finnish speaker. So here's the two choices today. We have the birth of fire and Maahinen. The birth of fire looks like this, and Maahinen looks like this. So take a moment to decide which of these cards speaks to you today and which one you would like to know more about, or that might be able to tell you more about yourself. I will put the timestamps below, and then we'll do a Hebrune reading about each of them. We'll see you there. Okay, folks, for those of you who chose the birth of fire, I'm still going to refer back to my book here because it is new stories to me, and I want to be as accurate as I can be. From what I understand, the birth of fire is the Ace of Wands. It corresponds to the Ace of Wands in the traditional tarot deck, which is the wands are a fire sign. They represent torches, or possibly the sticks that are used to make fire. You can see my fire is dancing over here as I speak about it. So the key words for this card from this deck are the birth and utilizing of new ideas, inspiration, new beginning, igniting the inner fire, intuitive instincts, awakening of Kundalini energy, discovering hidden resources of strength. So the story that goes with this is that there are many characters. I'll try to be as brief as possible. There's a character named Lauchi who lives in the far north, and she is known as the Witch of the North sometimes. She's a female character that is said to be evil, but maybe she's just stern because she's had some bad luck in her life. She had stolen the heavenly lights, and she'd hidden them into the stone hill of Pohjola. Pohjola is the far north country. Darkness consumed the world until Ukko, who is the chief of the gods, or the sky god, one of the original gods, Ukko, grew tired of living without the light. So he struck the fire spark with his terrifying sword, a mottled snake, and 3 feathers of the fiery eagle. He gave the spark to the Maid of Air for her to cradle. And the Maid of Air is his daughter. But the spark slipped from her hands. The fire spark plunged through the 9 layers of heavens, rent asunder the clouds, and burned the lands and forests on its path. and finally it rolled into the lake of Alu, which burst into flames. The water began to boil, and the fish were in agony. A white fish swallowed the spark, and the other fish heard its wails as its stomach began to burn. A bigger fish ate the white fish, and finally a pike devoured them all, and the spark within them. Wainamoinen, who is the hero and the child of the Sky Maiden, Wainamoinen heard the pike's cries of pain, and he tried to catch it, but he failed. That's when he called to his aid the elder element, the folk of the water. Water was also his own element, and a small black man arose from the sea at his behest. Although the man was small, he had the strength of many, and he managed to catch the burning fish. As he was about to gut the fish, a knife with a golden handle and a silvery blade fell from the sky, and he opened the pike's stomach with it. Out of the white fish came the blue coil that held a red coil, which in turn held the fire spark, which the small man gave to Wainamoinen, but the fire spark broke free again and raged through the land, causing much devastation. Wainamoinen labored with the aid of Ilmarinen, who is possibly a brother, to recapture it, and it was finally able to persuade the spark into a copper pot that harnessed it for mankind to use. So it's an elaborate story. It's like there's a lot going on here. You can see on the card there's the pike, and this is the fire spark coming down, sort of in a way of lightning, but it's burning this tree. And again, it's the Ace of Wands is what it corresponds to in the traditional tarot. So that's the basic story. I'm going to set the card right there near the fire, and we'll go ahead and do a reading with the Hebrunes to get some more clarity about this is how it corresponds to your situation. So I'm going to pull out, I think I'm going to pull out, what do I think I should pull out today? Let me listen in for a minute. I think we're going to pull out 5, and then we'll see if there's more that are needed here. Okay, 5 to start. I've got a new set that I made out of some upcycled tiles. That is the central issue. Interesting. Next we're going to go to what came before. We've got cough. Next we'll go to what is going to help. We have a lamed. Fascinating. Below is what may be a challenge for us right now. Got a hit. And then to the right will be that which is coming up next. And that is hay. Okay, so here's what we've got going on. So the central issue, this is so fascinating. If you just look at the shapes, I just want to point this out. If you just look at the shapes, we've got this long thing and the Vav here, which that's the first thing I thought was like, wow, that looks so much like the Vav. And then we pulled out the Lamed, which looks almost identical to that lightning bolt that's coming down. So that's just my first impressions here is we have some really powerful energy resonating with this birth of the fire. So the Vav is a letter that is about connection. It is it's a standing person, but it is a tall, straight spine with a slightly bowed head. But it has to do with connection. It literally means "and" in the Hebrew, and it is in the Paleo. It looks like a peg or a hook because it connects things together. And sometimes those pegs are made out of gold or silver in order to connect, for instance, the veils that shielded the Holy of Holies in the ancient Mishkan or the temple, which is inside of which was the Holy Ark of the Covenant, inside of which was the Torah, the word of the divine. So this letter is a connecting letter, and it connects us also to the divine. So it connects us to heaven because it is this, again, tall, straight spine. It's also got that same kundalini energy in it because it is a spine and it has this life force going up and down it in the same way that this lightning does. It is the letter that corresponds to the gallbladder in the body and the sense of hearing. So it's about being able to listen, and possibly have some gall, like to have some anger about what's going on in the world, maybe injustice that's happening in the world. And so that's what I'm seeing here for the Vav, that perhaps something has happened that has been unjust, but we need to still connect. We need to reach up to divinity, maybe ask for help from divinity. It symbolizes, this card symbolizes new ideas, but where do we get those ideas from? They come from a connection to something greater than ourselves. They come from a connection to the divine. And this lightning bolt, again, which resembles the Vav on some level, is about those ideas coming down to one from the place above, from what we perceive as the higher self or the higher power. And this is this connection that we use to become closer to the divine is what gives us the opportunity for birthing new ideas. And it also has to do with I don't know, anything that's longer than it is wide kind of has a phallic symbol to it, like, so it's got sexual energy involved in it too. So, and again, like I said, it's the spine, so Kundalini energy, which in the East can have to do with harnessing one's own sexual energy for creative pursuits. So not to, overemphasize sexuality, but if one harnesses one's own sexual energy rather than letting it run amok, one can direct it into more creative pursuits that don't have to do with procreation of children. So I think the Vav is incredibly appropriate for this reading right here. So that's about connection. Let's just say basically connection is the major theme of the letter Vav. What came just before that is the letter Kaf. And the letter Kaf is, it looks like the palm of a hand. It's stretched out to the left here, so as if, it would look like this if we were holding it upright. But this is the letter Kaf, and so it has to do with power, right? So what came before this is some kind of power. It could be a power for good, using one's hand to help someone out, or using one's hand to lift someone up, or protecting somebody with their power. It's the letter that begins the word koach, which means power in Hebrew, and it has to do with the sun in the sky, which is interesting because the story is that Lauhi had stolen the sun and all the heavenly lights. So we had the sun in the sky, and then it was covered over. And so Kaf also has to do with being covered, like kaper, kaparet, which means to cover over. And she had hidden them in this mountain. So she had used her hand, she had used her power to take away something that was important for everyone else in the entire universe. So it could be used for positive, but it seems like in this case, with regards to this card, it has to do with something negative happening, some kind of power that was misused, some kind of power that was lorded over someone and went ahead and covered the light that was necessary for living. And it has to do with the binary of wealth and poverty in the foundations. So it can have to do with giving and receiving, about taking what is rightfully yours, but also giving what you have to give. So there's some kind of exchange perhaps that goes on here with the Kaf. And it has to do with, again, the letter Kaf begins the word keter, which means crown. So it's about something that's over the head, something that's being held over the head, again, either for positive in terms of a crown, or negatively, as in being suppressed. And similarly, the sun, which corresponds to this letter, can be a positive force. Of course, it is a positive force in that it keeps us alive, but it can also be really difficult. It can be very hot, or it can burn one, in fact, and cause even skin cancer in excess. So moderating what is given and what is received, moderating one's own idea of wealth and poverty, being able to understand that even if you have like physical material wealth, that that could lead you to become spiritually impoverished if you are not careful with how you perceive that and use that in your life, how you use it in your power. So that's the thing that's come right before this, is this idea of power. What will help us in our situation right now with this connection to the divine is the Lamed. And again, I just can't get over how much this looks exactly like the card here. The Lamed, again, this is the first time I've used this deck, and so I'm really excited at how it's playing out so far. Anyway, the Lamed is the one letter that reaches above the line. It reaches up in the same way that this fire spark reaches down. It's a way that we can reach up to connect with the divine. So reaching up with heart to connect with divinity. Heart is Lev in Hebrew, and Lamed is the first letter of the word Lev. So it has to do with reaching up with heart by listening to one's heart also, and taking action in the world. So it has to do with taking action, it has to do with heart, and it has to do with learning and teaching both. So limud, lamed, which is, teaching and learning. So we have something to learn here. We have something to teach. We have to reach up to the divine in order to receive the wisdom that we get from divinity, in order to bring it back to earth, to teach it to others, so that it will be of use to humans in the world. And so that's what's going to help us right now, is reaching up with heart and teaching and learning what we need to learn, teaching what we need to teach. What is going to be a challenge for us right now in this time is the letter Het. And the letter Het is the first letter of the word Choshek, which means darkness. So again, in this card, we have Lauhi, who has stolen the heavenly lights. And when she steals those heavenly lights, it becomes dark, and it becomes untenable for the people who are living in the land. So we have a challenge with darkness. We have a challenge with something that has not served us. The reason why Het is affiliated with darkness, it begins the first letter of the word Choshek, but Choshek is the first time that the letter Het appears in the Torah. So it's about darkness. But it's also about infinity. It's the number 8, and the number 8 is the number that corresponds to the infinite. So as you've seen, the number 8 on its side looks like an infinity symbol, but also we have 7 days of creation, and so one more than that is whatever comes after, which is to say the infinite. So we may be having some challenges with the idea of creation, the idea of the infinite, what comes after creation. It's also the letter that begins the word Chai, so it's about life and life force. So we may be having challenges with our own life force, with the idea of the infinite, or just the darkness that comes with life, because life has both light and darkness in it. And because we're dealing with this card in the birth of fire, I'm guessing that Choshek has to do with that. Choshek is the challenge, that darkness is the challenge, that we've come into a time of darkness perhaps, or in our attempts to have connection, we have found darkness right now, because there's been a period of time where the light has been stolen away, and that now we have darkness, and we need to deal with that. And when we do deal with that, the way to do that is through connection and elevating our hearts back up toward divinity. So if we're having some challenges with darkness, bring ourselves back up to connection and heart. And where that will bring us to in the end here is the letter He. And He is the letter that begins the word Hineni, which is presence, being present. it's also the first letter of, and well, it's included in all of the words that have to do with being, existence. So Havaya, which is one of the names of the divine, meaning the one who is. The Yud He Vav He. There's two He's in the divine name, which is to say presence, and Vav, presence, which is basically half of divinity is showing up. It's half of divinity is being present and being aware. Half of connecting with divinity is being present for it. It has to do with light, actually, because light is mentioned 5 times in the creation story, and He corresponds to the number 5, and so it has to do with the foundation of sight. So here we have darkness, and we are moving in toward a period of sight where we can see again after that divine spark has dropped to the earth again, so that we have the ability to harness fire and use it for our own good. I love this story with the red and blue coils, because this story is very ancient, it's very old, and yet the idea of a red wire and a blue wire coming together to make a spark is relatively modern, but this ancient story somehow has the red wire and the blue wire coming together with the spark, and descending from the heavens to bring that light to humanity when the sun and stars had been stolen away. So it's got 5 numbers at 5 having to do with action again in the world. This idea of action, Lamed also has the foundation of action, but because there are 5 fingers in the hand, He can also correspond to action or some kind of action in the world with one's hand, using one's hands toward action. So we've got the 5 fingers, and we've got the kaf, which is the palm of the hand. We've got a lot of, I guess, our own ability to do something with this. And again, the foundation of sight, because the mention of light 5 times, but sight is also the foundation that's mentioned in the Sefer Yetzirah as the foundation that corresponds to the letter He. So we have all of these things coming back to the idea of light and sight. So again, our central idea here is connection, that there has been some disconnect with possibly with the divine, that in order that in the recent past we've had this idea of wealth and poverty. We have this idea of power that possibly has been misused or maybe not used to its best advantage. And now we're in a time of connection, that we need to find connection somehow with the divine. And in order to do that, the best way is to reach up with our hearts to learn what we need to learn from the inspiration that we get in this birth of fire, the inspiration that's descending from heaven. Learn that and then teach it as well. And if we are concerned about the idea of an unending, something that's infinitely going on in the darkness, perhaps the choshek, that is possibly, we're afraid that it's going to go on forever, or that somehow our life has turned dark, because this is on the lower line. We're guessing that it has to do with something challenging or negative. That if we have this concern that our life has gone dark, that there is darkness in our world, that this will go on forever and ever, we can let go of that by knowing that we have the opportunity and the ability to connect with divinity, that divinity will drop that spark to us if we lift our hearts toward it, to learn what we need to learn, teach what we need to teach, and that will bring us forward into presence, into the presence of the divine, into the presence of the current moment, into the presence of the current, which is to say the electricity, the spark that's coming from above, and that we will then have light and sight and connection and heart in our world. So for those of you who chose the birth of fire in my new book about the Finnish mythology of the Kalevala, I so appreciate you coming and joining me on this journey. We'll be doing a lot more of these, because I have to learn the stories. I have to teach the stories to learn the stories, as I've just learned here, that one way to do it is to learn from teaching. And so thank you so much for joining me today. If you like these readings, please like and subscribe to my channel and let other people know about it. And we will see you here next time. Alright, so for those of you who chose Maahinen as your card for today, Maahinen corresponds loosely to the Eight of Pentacles in the traditional tarot. But I'm just going to read about his story now. Maahinen got the keywords about being grounded, physical actions, crafts, orderliness, meticulousness, expression of creativity on a practical level, enjoying one's work, practice, and honesty. Maahinens belong to the folk who lived underground. In their world, everything was opposite to ours. Maahinens walked with their feet toward the sky. Left and right were contrariwise, and so were night and day. Even the trees grew upside down. Those who lived there were sometimes thought to be the spirits of the dead who continued their life down below with their families. Round ponds were rumored to be the gateways into this subterranean world. Maahinens were usually small, brownish humanoids who could change their form and often visited the world above in the form of ants or frogs. It was unwise to step in the path of ants, for it might very well be a path of Maahinens, and they could make the person get lost in the forest. The Maahinens of Sami folklore, Kufitars, were, on the other hand, fair and tall men and women who herded white reindeers. They could also fall in love with humans, and the children that came from such a union could be recognized from their shiny black hair, slightly slanted eyes, and wondrous wealth and success. When building a house, it was recommended to first ask permission from the Haltia, which is the spirit, of that spot. To get this permission, one had to sleep at the place they were going to build the house, and the Haltia would appear to them in their dream. If it acted benevolent and polite, the permission was granted, but if it appeared dark and malevolent, it was better to find another place straight away. Cowsheds that were built in the wrong places could especially disturb the Maahinens, for the animals' urine trickled down into their homes. Maahinens could then appear in the shed owner's dream and ask that the shed be removed or else. If the owner didn't comply, even after multiple pleas, the Maahinens would burn the shed down, causing much greater trouble and expense than that the shed's removal or moving would have caused. It was also hazardous to pour boiling water on the ground because it could end up into a Maahinen's home. Maahinens lived like humans. They raised cattle, practiced agriculture, and were very skilled in all kinds of crafts. They married, had children, and grew old just like humans. Maahinens didn't really care for their elderly and tried from time to time to change them for human children. Unbaptized children were especially in danger of being swapped. The changeling would act oddly, eat more than a grown man without growing, and they couldn't always learn to talk. One way to reveal the changeling was to place a large kit in the middle of the floor, fill it with cream, and start to churn it with enough force to make it splash all over, even on the changeling. This would agitate it to shout something like, "In all my 90 years, I've never seen churning like that." It's obvious that the changelings were used to explain the children that had been born either disabled or otherwise challenged. Sometimes a Maahinen would come and ask a human to come help them with delivering a child. The Maahinens didn't want to reveal the way to their homes, so they would blindfold the midwife. And as a reward for a job well done, they could give some wondrous objects like a silver pitcher or a shirt that never got dirty. But the receiver could not reveal to anyone where the gift had come from, lest it disappear. So these kind of stories are just wild with the Finnish mythology, and I am fascinated with them. I love them. They're just so interesting. Well, I'll tell you after this about a thing that this reminds me of. But let's just go ahead and get into the reading of the Hebrunes for you. So it's about taking care of stuff on the physical level. And so let's pull out some Hebrunes. We're going to pull out 5 today. That's going to be in that shape that, let's see if I can move this up a little further. You can still see him. We start with the one that represents the present in the center, a central issue. And we have the letter Zayin. Then we'll go to the past. What has come right before now? We have the letter Beit. What is helping us in the situation right now? We have the letter Resh. What is a challenge for us right now in our situation? We have the letter Samech. And what is coming up next in our future situation here? And we have the letter Pei. Okay. So our central issue in this situation is the letter Zayin. And the letter Zayin is the number 7 in Gematria, so it has to do with luck and magic. The 7 days of creation, 1 through 7, and 7th day being Shabbat. It has to do with the sense of smell, which is interesting because this month, the month of Cheshvan, it corresponds to the sense of smell, in part because it brings up memory. It has to do with power in terms of a sword and a scepter. So Zayin is said to represent a sword or a scepter. So it has to do with power. It has to do with a sovereign ruling over someone with that scepter, but also protection in terms of having a sword that would protect one from anything that was coming to them for ill. It is said that the Zayin also represents the Shabbat bride. So she is seen, the day of Shabbat is seen as a bride, and we'll welcome her with song and feasts, and she is like a bride given 7 blessings and circles the groom 7 times. There are 7 Sephirot, which are the lower Sephirot that humans can access. So there's a lot of magical and mystical affiliations with the number 7, and lucky as well. And it also could have to do with Zebulun, which is the tribe who is said to do exchange and business. So that's interesting with the correspondence with the 8 of Pentacles. The 8 of Pentacles often has to do with some kind of work. So craft work, for instance, as they say in the description of this card of Maahinen, is that he's about making things and providing magical gifts. So Zayin is our central issue right now, having to do with exchange and magic, and also power, swords and scepters. So what came right before that is the letter Beit, and Beit is a house. It is about building, and so I think this is really interesting because one of the things we read in the story about Maahinen is that you would have to ask the earth, the spirit of the earth, if it was okay to build where you wanted to build. And here we are talking about a house, and it has to do with any kind of structure. So it could be a business building, it could be a school, some kind of place of learning. It could have to do with a spiritual building or the home that one lives in. But in general, I think about Beit as being the home where we dwell, and that can be our bodies. Our bodies are the home of our soul, but also just the planet. The planet is our home. It's where we live. It's where all of our stuff is, and some say it is the footstool of the divine, and that the universe is the home of the divine, but I think more along the lines of the divine being the home of the universe. So we have some kind of connection to a house here. The house also has to do with the time of Shabbat. So we've had the Shabbat bride here with the number 7, but Beit is the letter that rules over the day of Shabbat. So, and Shabbat is about rest. It's about taking time off to rest oneself after working. And the Maahinen is about work. It's about doing daily work and craft. So Shabbat is about resting ourselves, resting our bodies, and maybe resting the land as well. It is connected to the mouth in the body, and again, at the time of Shabbat, the planet Saturn in the sky, and it is the foundation of life and death. And that's interesting as well, because we have this idea that maybe these Maahinens are the dead that live underground in they have a new life. Once they die, they go underground and they turn upside down, and left is right and right is left and day is night. But they live and they have a family and they grow old and they have children. But they live underground once they're dead. So there's this binary foundation of life and death. So this division between where we live now and where we may live in the future, possibly under the ground. So that's come right before. It is yeah, it's the house. It's about building a house, perhaps, and about resting in that house. So that's what's come right before. Some kind of house has been built, and now we're in this time of Shabbat. We've come from building a house, and now we're resting in it with the Shabbat bride, but also being sovereigns of our own domain, being protected. Being protective of our own home. The thing that is going to help us in this time is the letter Resh. Resh is the representative of the beginning of a thing. So it is the first letter in the word Rosh, as in Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Hashanah, the head of a year or the head of a month. We've got Rosh Chodesh coming up next Friday. So something beginning is something that's going to help us is to start anew, start something new. It has to do with the head in the body, but it also has to do with humility. It is said that it's supposed to be like the head bowing. So there's something to do with beginning again with humility. Resh is said to have the binary foundation of seed and barrenness. So it's about seed, and that we're planting something new, and that's what's going to help us through this time of this power that we've come into, is to remember to plant something new and start something new, but with humility. And it also has to do with Mercury. It rules over the planet of Mercury in the heavens, so it can have to do with communication as well. And we've got the mouth here with Beit. Beit is the foundation of the mouth in the body. So something to do with communicating, something to do with beginning again, and something to do with coming to something with humility. It has to do with the north direction in the celestial temple. So I don't know much about astrology, but possibly a north node, which means challenges that are to come. So what's going to help us through this time right now is the Rosh. The Resh. Resh is, again, the head, the seed, the humility, the communicating effectively with Mercury to start something new. And that's what's going to help us right now as we work on our craft, as we build towards something new. And what is going to be a challenge for us at this time is the letter Samech. And Samech is a circle. It's about cycles and circles. It's about like the wheel of the year, maybe a cycle of the month or a cycle of the year. That we're at a time right now in our hemisphere about darkness and about the fall time when things are dying around us. They seem to be dying anyway, but so possibly we're having some challenges around that idea of where we are in the cycle of the year. And it also has to do with being surrounded, though. It has to be surrounded with love, surrounded with protection, again, with that sword here. So, but interestingly, Samhain also is seen as a thorn. And in the Paleo or ancient Hebrew, it looked like a thorn. And we have a little vestigial thorn in the upper left corner there. You can see as a little spike. So it's about something that is irritating or agitating. Samhain corresponds to the foundation of agitation in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. So something is irritating, something is agitating, something about this cycle is not feeling comfortable right now, that we're going through an uncomfortable cycle right now in our world, that there may be an ending that we can't see the beginning about yet. It's just irritating and agitating right now in our situation, that we've got this sense of power and sovereignty, perhaps, but there's something that's irritating and thorny underneath it. And when we feel that, the best thing to do is to move ourselves back up to a new beginning, to understand that cycles go round and round, that this time of where we are in this power is not a forever thing, that things will continue to change, that we will be able to start anew, and that when we're feeling stuck, when we're feeling like there's just this agitation and irritation about where we are in the cycle, it's best to start something new. It's best to rely with humility on a new beginning, to the head of a thing. And once we get through this period of time, that brings us to our final letter, which is the letter Pe. And the letter Pe is a mouth. It is said to be the mouth of the divine speaking the world into existence. So again, more communication. We've had the mouth here. We have the Mercury with communication at the Rosh, the Resh, and we have Pe, which is the mouth of the divine. And if you look carefully, you can see that that the bait can fit right inside the Pe, because the divine speaks the world into creation, and the first letter of the Torah is Bereshit, with the bait and the resh. So Bereshit. So here we have this. What's coming up is this communication, this speech, this creation through speech. That there's some kind of communication and creation coming through speech. And Pe is the number 80 in Gematria, and 80 is the number 8 times 10, 8 being a letter that represents the infinite, and 8 times 10 being that ultimate manifestation of the infinite. Because we have 7 days of creation, and then one more is infinity. We have 7 days where there was work, and then there was rest, and then everything after that is considered the infinite. And here we have that infinite times 10. So it is this ultimate manifestation of the infinite coming in the future here. It is about speaking things into creation, about having the power to create things with one's own speech, being able to say a thing and have it come into being. There's a midrash that the words abracadabra, which is the magic spell that we hear so frequently in the cartoons, is I speak and it comes to being, abracadabra. So it is about that idea of speaking things into creation. So be careful what you say, right? Because I just said that and this letter came flying out of my hand, like, watch out. I made something happen. So be aware and careful. I mean, not to say be afraid, but be conscious about what you speak, what you ask for, what you want to have happen. Do not curse without intention. Do not curse at all if you can avoid it, but speak blessings, speak things into existence that you want to see in the world, because you know you have the power to create with your words. And don't use that power don't use that power frivolously. We have the ability to bring things into a manifestation through speech. And the pay is also this spiral that spirals in and out. It's like a wheel. It's like again that circle. We've got this circle here and this spiral here, but they're similar because we think things go in a circle, but in fact they go in spirals. That we are never in the same place twice. That we have the potential to, when we get back to a place that's familiar, not say, oh, here I am again, but here I am encountering the same idea. How have I changed? How am I better? How can I be better next time this comes around? Next time there's a new beginning, how can I change myself? Because circumstances may look similar, but they're never the same. And what the variable that we have control over is our own selves. So as we spiral in and as we spiral out into the universe, think about that divine breath that exists within us, that we've been given for this finite period of time, and how it rushes through us and gives us the ability to speak aloud those things we desire and those things we wish to create. And again, the Eight of Pentacles is about creation. It's about manifesting what it is we'd like to see in the world. So we have that power of speech, and that is what is coming for us. And it will bring us to this place of infinity. It'll bring us to oneness with the infinite, because as we know, there's a conservation of energy, according to science and physics, that nothing ever goes away, that there is breath, and that every breath that we have has been breathed, by every creature that's ever existed on the planet. That even when one passes from this realm, their body becomes earth. That we have this idea of earth, that these folk, these Maahinens, take care of actions on the physical level, that they are under the earth and tending to the earth, and that we need to have greater control, or I don't want to say control, but I guess hold on to our power about here with that Zayin, hold on to our power over what we can control physically in our arenas, that we can keep our feet on the ground, we can remain grounded, that we need to live in harmony with our environment and be considerate of, say, pouring things on the ground that might injure those who dwell within it. That when we build a house, we ask for permission. That when we have power, we use it appropriately. That when we have a concern about thorns, that maybe we don't just tear them up. Maybe we can understand that they're protecting us. And that if we are concerned about cycles that seem endless and just redundant and getting us nowhere, that we can start something new. And the new thing we can start is by just with our own speech. We can speak things into existence, and recognize that spiral, that cycle, that the things that we say and the things that we do matter in the world. They matter in the world of energy, in relationship, but also in the world, like literally in the physical world. So do what you can to stay connected, use your power wisely, and speak carefully, mindfully, in order to bring about better connection and health within our ecosystem, within our cycles of control. And for those of you who chose Maahinen, thank you so much for joining me today for this reading. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these now that I have this deck of cards and the understanding of how they correspond for me to this ancient stories of the Finnish people. And I am very much enjoying the synchronicity that I'm seeing between my Finnish heritage and my Jewish heritage, and how they play out together. And for those of you who like this reading, I hope that you'll like and subscribe and tell others about it. And I will see you here next time. If you want to hear my other story, just hang out. If you don't, we'll say goodbye. So the other story I wanted to mention was because last night I had a dream, and I will pull both of these cards back out to look at. I'll move the Hebrunes aside. So I had two-part dreams, and I just wanted to throw this in at the end here. One of my dreams, I was building a house, and I had laid the foundation, and I was trying to decide where to put, interestingly, the toilet and the bathtub, and it was a very small space. And in that dream, I was trying to fit these fixtures into a very small space, and in came two of my child and their partner with a wheelbarrow full of manure and cotton and hay, and they started spreading it around on the ground, and I was alarmed because I was like, I'm trying to put these fixtures in, and they were laughing, and they said, no, we have to first put down the compost. We first have to take this horrible pile of what is seeming waste and mix it into the earth to make it fertile. Don't worry about disposing of your waste and cleaning yourself up until you have prepared the soil. So that really came up for me in terms of the fact that this is the card that came out today for Maahinen. And then the other dream I had this morning was about being in a place where I saw a tree on fire. So I was actually in a building, and somebody knocked on the window and said, the house is on fire, or there's a fire. They didn't say the house is on fire. They said there is a fire. And so I looked out, and there was this tree that was on fire at a distance, and I panicked. I went to the next door people and found it on their door and said, look out, there's a fire. And I kept going down the line of houses, knocking on windows and doors and saying, there's fire. And finally I came to a house where there was a big party, and the people in the house invited me in, and I said, but there's a fire. And they looked out, and they saw the tree flaming across the water, and they said, yeah, there's always a fire. And I realized that the fire couldn't get to us right now, and that, yeah, there's always a fire burning somewhere, so you might as well enjoy yourself. So those are the messages from my dreams tonight that relate to these two cards very interestingly. And again, I appreciate you hanging with me this far if you've made it this far, and I hope to see you next time.